So today's show actually, it comes a little bit out of yesterday's show when we were talking about Ilhan Omar and what a devastating effect Ilhan Omar's tweet and her ability to be grassroots funded and her tweet about Canada really was, because it's one of these things that's across enemy lines, if you will, and I'll explain that in a second. So today's board, right? So this show's all about relationships. The whole point is to talk about our relationship with money, to compare and contrast the fiat standard and all the financial relationships that come about with that world, and a Bitcoin standard and all the financial relationships we're creating, will create, looking to create, and we contrast them. And in my case, what's really interesting is that I chose this frame of a breakup, and then my old country, Canada, just went completely psycho ex-girlfriend. And I get to approach all of these relationships that I used to have with my country and just see them in a new light. So it is the golden goose that keeps on honking, Canada, right? For Bitcoin anyway. We just have a ton of great stories about it. So it's not going to be all about that today. Ukraine is a great contrast. We're going to touch on Ukraine a bit again. And really, I think underline how important these past few days have been for Bitcoin and how really close we are right now to a hyper Bitcoinized world. So if you see my little NPC Wojak here, right? This man is living in something called the prison of two ideas. That expression was invented by a fellow named Greg Gutfeld. Greg Gutfeld hosts a show on Fox News in the afternoons called The Five, kind of a comedic show. He's got a former wrestler, a lot of really interesting people. And then he created an evening show to compete with The Tonight Show and all these other ones, Stephen Colbert. Well, it turns out he's the biggest in the world now. He just passed The Tonight Show and everybody. He did it, in September, but already within a couple of days, he was there. Now, the reason I like Greg Gutfeld, he, definitely on the right, let's say, but a lot like Bill Maher or some other folks on the left that are able to transcend the prison of two ideas and see things from the other side from time to time and aren't really caught up in some of the binary type of arguments that politics naturally fall into. And so Greg Gutfeld came up with this really clever way of explaining it, which is the prison of two ideas. And what he basically says is, you get caught in these dichotomies and you don't understand there's actually a million options out there. It's not really black and white, or in this case, blue and red. And what we end up seeing is this prison manifests itself in the way stories are shared online. So these little dots that I have here, the blue and the red, this is a representation of actual statistical amalgamation of data that you can find online. And what it is stories shared within audiences on social media, right? So you'll see people tweet this out sometimes. You'll see people share this, particularly around election time. And what it basically is trying to tell you is that CNN, MSNBC, large viewership, all these little other dots would be smaller publications, generally considered left. What ends up happening here is you're measuring how much it's shared within a circle versus how much it actually makes it to readers on the other side, right? So that's what this graph is often showing. It's the same on the right, right? The prison of two ideas is absolutely not just a left-wing problem or just a right-wing problem. It's the whole thing, right? It's the whole thing. And there's only a few people that are able to transcend that. Greg Gutfeld, Bill Maher, many others out there. Not many. I wish there were more. But anyway, there's two. So one of the things that is amazing about Bitcoin is that it can shake the box often and for a brief moment, create a crack, create a little sliver of light where people can escape the prison of two ideas, where information can come over the top, an aerial bombardment of truth, which is a little bit what we saw with Ilhan Omar yesterday. But today's news brings a ton of these examples. So the first that I want to underline was from a video today by Sticks and Hammer 666. I don't know if anyone knows who Sticks and Hammer 666 is. A big YouTube personality. He's been around for years. And he did one of his shows. So he does about 5 or 6, 7 videos a day sometimes. Really high output, really high quality YouTube feed. And if you don't follow him, you definitely should. We should get him on the show sometimes. He's been on BitChute, taking Bitcoin for years. Really interesting guy. Now he did a show today, and it's the first one here. So whenever you see this prison of two ideas, and what I'm talking about is that sliver of light, Bitcoin making an exit ramp to get out of the prison of two ideas and to shake the box and see things new for the first time. And one of the ones that I want to mention here, the first one, is the one that Sticks and Hammer mentioned today on politics in Canada. And I'm speaking to a 4chan story that he underlined. The 4chan story is this. Anyone who's aware of Pepe's in Bitcoin remembers that this was deliberately turned as a matter of experiment, really, as a matter of trolling, to turn it into a white supremacist symbol, all in joke, in jest, and in humor. It started on 4chan with a lot of people talking, and then the collection, of course, was a big thing in Bitcoin for many years. Way before there were any NFTs on Ethereum, these Pepe NFTs were big, right? Rare Pepes, people loved them. And people still do love them. And then, of course, the Anti-Defamation League fell for the trap, said, yes, it is a white supremacist symbol. And then it got, sort of tarred that way. Now, the 4chan guys are up to it again. And Yara Sachs, an MP in Canada, didn't understand that this is the way things work. And the 4chan folks decided to make honk honk, buy into this narrative that it's a white supremacist symbol or sound. And they started memeing it into existence. And this is really high level trolling, right? To meme something into existence like that. And then for this woman who made a video yesterday in the Canadian Parliament going on and on about how honk honk was a Nazi slogan, but also with HH, right? So the HH part was the big connection. And she did this like it was a huge reveal, and she was this Sherlock Holmes detective, and she'd uncovered it. And as if she was just more serious, you would believe her. Her seriousness was just off the charts. She had uncovered a great crime against humanity, honk honk. And in the end, the video has now been shared widely around the world. And I think it is such an absurdity that it breaks this prison of two ideas. So it's another one of these elements that just comes right over the top, where even now, I know there are enough brain dead people in the world to continue to fall into the prison of two ideas around this. So I'm not saying it's a cure-all. I'm just saying a higher portion of normal saw through the prison of two ideas on this one. A higher portion of normal said, whoa, this is crazy, crazy, right? So it gets even better. There's a Twitter handle that you can follow now, Ottawa Gestapo, and it's sort of like a fake police site giving police updates about what's going on in Ottawa. And they had a hilarious one, so I got to share it. So Interim Chief Steve S. Balls tells you what to think about nasty truck protest and why the new and improved police-based occupation is way better. So these guys are just trolling this all the time. And the reason why that's funny, I think funny, is because although the truckers are gone, the police now occupy the downtown of Ottawa. You can't actually go anywhere. And there's a big mall downtown, and a bunch of people said it was open yesterday. They're going to go. But of course, one little thing happened and it turned into a big evacuation situation, high alert. You need to go through checkpoints to get anywhere near Parliament now. And not everyone has access. They turn away journalists. They turn away anyone who just wants to go for a walk. It used to be when I worked on the Hill, you could smoke joints on the Parliament on the lawn in front of Parliament, and no one cared. There was no even police guns. I was in a terrorist attack, an actual terrorist attack once in Parliament, where a guy came in and shot people, killed people, shot the walls, bullets flying everywhere. That really happened, right? But before that, there were no guns on Parliament. Even the guards did not have a firearm. There was no way to do anything like that. Now you can't get anywhere near it. Police everywhere drawing guns and all this stuff. And it's shocking a lot of people. Like a lot of Canadians are shocked by this stuff, especially the people in Ottawa, right? Shocked that this is happening. Now, shocked is one thing. It's another one of these stories that have forced people to exit this two idea prison, right? So it's one of those ones where people have a real experience on the ground and it actually starts changing their mind. Next, banking. This is great. So my former boss, I guess you could say, Jesse Powell at Kraken, and Brian Armstrong of Coinbase founding, have been flagged, red flagged by the OSC, that's the Ontario Securities Commission. It's like the SEC, except for a province. And we don't have a federal securities regulator really in Canada. It's the like banking is the opposite in Canada and the United States. Securities regulations are also kind of the opposite. So in this case, they're mostly provincial. So the Ontario, but it's the same as the New York one in the case of Canada. It's the biggest one. It's the most important regulator for that. So they said that because Jesse and Brian encouraged users to self-custody wallets, that they ought to be flagged and they shouldn't do that and whatever. Of course, this was met by complete derision. You know, people have been self-hosting wallets for a long time. And it happened to come on a day when the Canadian Bankers Association are trying to release this new digital authentication scheme they've come up with. So it's contrasting and definitely popping and forcing people to go, what the heck's going on here? Another one of these ones that sort of breaks the mold. You've got Forbes writing the same thing. A title in Forbes News today: Bitcoin's use case strengthens as Canadian bank accounts get frozen, right? Now, we've seen that banks have stopped seizing accounts, right? So this is news. So as of last night, I guess, Canadian banks said they'd stopped freezing accounts of truckers and people who donated to the protest. To me, it looks like they're getting a lot of complaints about stuff like Forbes being written, as well as what looks like a bank run, right? No one is really able to decipher it, but it looked like a lot of people withdrew money on the weekend when it first was announced. And the data is absolutely not being shared, and the banks do not need to share it right now because they can't be sued. They're completely immune from all legal recourse. But nevertheless, it looks like something's going on, and they've stopped seizing these accounts. Next, deterministic optimism had a really, I think, a perfect way to summarize it. And this is a tweet for him. I don't think they survive this, meaning Canadian banks. Seriously. No sane person or business will ever bank with Canadian banks again, right? Now, even to just cover it real quick, my thoughts are there'll be a judicial review shortly. And the judiciary, the legal system in Canada might be too corrupted. I saw there was no bail for one of the lead organizers of the protest. The judge who did the bail hearing was a former failed political candidate of the Liberal Party and appointed and blah, 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 blah. So if there's any more of that going on, and there's a lot more of that scenario happening in the Canadian judiciary, we'll see. But it looks like that the order is a complete disaster, and that's why the banks have had to go back on it, because they were flagging people for $20. There was no scope to it. There was no degree of size, scale. No one really knows if they're a terrorist or not, right? Like what we've been talking about it. I don't know. Maybe. Am I a terrorist? I'm not sure. Nobody knows, right? Nobody knows. So in this way, the damage is done, right? It's too complicated and murky now, and is forcing a lot of people to exit, again, this binary of left and right. The next one here is about security. Let me see if this board can be seen everywhere here. So we've got security on the next one, right? Security. Now, the security one with, what we talked about yesterday, is there a war? Nobody knows. I'm not sure what's happening in Ukraine and Russia. But I do know this. Lawrence O'Donnell, who is a host of the news on MSNBC, is one of the dumbest fuckers in the world. I mean, this guy is rock bottom stupid. Let me tell you what he said. And he hosts the news. He had a tweet, 3 lines. Is Putin smart? ? What would make him smart? ? His weak, in parentheses, education ? Okay. Now, we've said on this show before that no one's doubting Putin is stupid. Whether or not he's right or wrong, everyone is questioning that, right? No one is saying he's a good guy, or I agree with everything Putin did, or blah, blah. No one is saying that. No one's even coming close to saying that. What we are saying is he's smart. He's a smart guy, right? And I think Legate Nullis on Twitter put it perfectly. He said, how could a KGB colonel who built his political career during the chaotic aftermath of the fall of the USSR possibly be as smart as political science grads and journalists who have never spoken to anyone who disagrees with them or had to make decisions with serious consequences? And that's really it, isn't it? So you've got this guy hosting the news who's sitting there wondering if Vladimir Putin is smart. Smart. Like, is he smart? Now, this is, in the end, a question of national security at some point, right? It looks like there's a lot of action over there. And the person who's supposed to be telling you what's going on is spending time wondering whether Putin is smart. I mean, is he smart? What difference would it make even? But is that really the kind of thing you should be thinking about in these circumstances? Are you trying to litigate his intelligence as if something would be gained from understanding his exact IQ? I mean, this guy, Lawrence O'Donnell, has a job because he looks serious. Imagine I did this show and I said, today, Ukraine and Russia have a bunch of serious stuff and they had to go to the business factory to do serious adult things and it's really adult-like. And if you didn't know how serious it is, it's kind of like the girl who gave the speech with the Hong Kong and she'd uncovered it. She's Sherlock Holmes. It's the HH thing from Germany, right? You know, she believes that because she's serious, maybe, I don't want to mind read her, but it seems like the body language is indicating that her seriousness denotes that you must listen and this is what's going on. And this fellow, Lawrence O'Donnell, I mean, he must have made a whole career off looking serious and doing the news, reading the news, right? But it turns out he thinks he's smarter than Vladimir Putin, who, if I'm not wrong, is maybe the richest person in the world. I mean, some people think, right? I mean, not the Forbes people who are just looking at your normal money, but he owns a big gas company. I mean, all of the gas companies in Russia, right? He's a rich guy. How rich? Who knows? I don't know, right? But speaking of rich, so this last one here to break our prison of two ideas, it's supposed to be oil drips, and I'm talking about energy. And, you know, here's where we're at on that. In Biden's speech yesterday, he warned energy prices would go up, right? Now, we know the memory hole of most mainstream media readers, listeners is pretty deep. You can throw almost anything in there and never see it again. But this is starting to get pretty obvious for even people who are stuck in this binary thing because it's going to cost you money, right? Costing you money brings you out of this, right? Real world things in your pocket. And so now we've seen that when Biden warned that the gas prices would go up, we remember now that inflation was, remember, not here at first, it's not there. And then it was transitory. Remember team transitory, right? Who was on team transitory? Then it was the supply chains, right? Supply chains, oh my God, that's what's causing it, right? You remember AOC said, wow, it's the supply, it's really complicated supply chain stuff, right? Oh, but then it was corporate greed. Then it was whatever that, you know, the woman from Massachusetts, the Senator Elizabeth Warren, right? You know, then it was corporate greed. Remember around Christmas, it was corporate greed. They wanted to charge you more for a turkey at Christmas. And that was their big master plan, right? That was inflation. But now it's Russia's fault, right? So cross out all of those other ones, right? But now it's Russia's fault, right? So in the end, the prison of two ideas brings you to a place, and this is the brain damage part, right? This is, and I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding about the brain damage piece, right? If you hold ideas that are so oppositional in your head for long enough, you'll go crazy. And they could be on either end, right? If you're someone who said, I'm a small government libertarian, but then it's like, go to war because I listen to, you know, hawkish, right-wing, warmongering media, right? So holding these oppositional views in your head does a lot of nasty things, right? Causes cognitive dissonance. It causes almost a schizophrenia, right? It can cause that. And this is brain damage, right? I'm not joking, right? So when I see in particular media handling an issue of the complexity of what's going on right now and the window of light that Bitcoin is bringing into all of these issues and the off-ramp that it's providing for people who are rushing out, when I look at all these journalists who have been, I mean, they believe it, right? This isn't a conspiracy. This is clown world stuff. This is stuff they believe in. You get a bunch of journalists that aren't really rich, right? We're wondering if they're having fun staying poor, but the business model sucks. So we know how much they get paid. It's not a lot, right? So are they having fun staying poor, or are they enjoying giving people brain damage, right? Which is it, right? Is it the poor part that's good, or is it the brain damage part? Because either way, I think when we look at things like, even look at FATF again, right? I did one on Hong Kong's birthday, if you remember, on the show a few weeks back. And it was, happy birthday, Hong Kong, you're dead, right? Because Hong Kong really was sacrificed for the purposes of FinTrack and FinCEN and FATF, the main board on top of it, right? The whole excuse that the CEO of Hong Kong used, that's the name of their governor or whatever they call it, a CEO, which I love. That was good Hong Kong. The CEO of Hong Kong, who now reports to China, Carrie Lam, said it's because we can't have extradition, right? The extradition was for money laundering. The extradition was for FATF, FinCEN initiatives. Now, and in the end, we went with it, right? We're like, okay, well, they need extradition. And in the end, it was like, okay, let's sacrifice Hong Kong to appease FinCEN and FATF in Paris and FinTrack in Canada. And now in Canada, we've used the FinTrack, FinCEN provisions to gut the banking sector and probably kill, probably, the country's in for some misery. It's in for some misery. It's first one into World War III, first one out, I think, but they're knee deep right now, going to be neck deep soon. And when you step back for a second and you say, wait a minute here, in order to appease FATF, right? In order to appease FinTrack and FinCEN, we've actually now sacrificed two pillars of Western democratic systems, Hong Kong and Canada, just gone. Just who cares, right? FATF, come on, FATF. They got goals, man, anti-terrorism, anti-money laundering. Jeez, who cares about Canada and Hong Kong? Shitholes, right? So you'll see things like the New York Times, and everyone's going on about this today, right? The New York Times and how they covered the Indian protests against Modi in early 2021. It was freedom fighters, it was reformers, it was all this stuff. Is it so different in Canada with the truckers? Is it really so different, right? And so people have been sharing that all day today. The New York Times coverage of the India farming protest and the New York Times coverage of the Canadian truckers protest. The Canadian truckers protest was, sounds good. Get these guys. They're in the way. Bridges, stuff, traffic, no good, right? So in the end, the problem is if you don't take one of those windows, if you don't see the light, you're going to be stuck in this prison of two ideas. And I'm afraid you get brain damage, right? It's actual brain damage. No joke, brain damage. So be careful. Got to break up. Got to get rid of this stuff. It's no good. It's no good.